I just wanted to give a wee overview of the programme today. So a welcome to begin with. Thank you again for coming. We've covered our housekeeping. So we have a little section of the overview. It's just the programme for today. So it's fairly probably what you'd expect, a little bit of information about HITRANS and HITRANS role, then more on the People in Place programme, which is a national programme within which this grant sits. And then the meat and bones of the presentation is going to be about the grant. That's why people are here today. So it's more information for you about what you'll need to know about the Active Travel Infrastructure Grant for workplaces. Then we've got a few stories from last year, just a chance to see the examples of the projects, and then we get to hear from our guest speakers who'll share their learning. They've done some really different projects last year. With a much smaller grant, so we funded 5 projects last year, but we'll be hearing from 2 of them. So really, really grateful to both Lucy Harding and Heather Southern for coming and joining us today to talk about the projects that they undertook with this grant. And then we get to involve you all. We've got a question and answer session. So yeah, please feel free to ask your questions. If you have used the chat and would rather have us read them out, we can do that. If you're happy to ask, either do old-fashioned hand raising in real life, or use the function in the chat in the Teams platform, whichever is more comfortable for you, and we'll try and get around everyone's questions. And then before we finish up, we'll just kind of recap on some key learnings, top tips, and any other resources that might help you to do work like this in your workplace. And then before we leave, we've just got a little bit of information about a very similar grant we've got on offer also from HITRANS in the People in Place programme just now. Okay, so I'll just go into our overview of HITRANS. So we have a map which shows the HITRANS area. As you can see, it's a large area in the north of Scotland. HITRANS is one of 7 regional transport partnerships which were established through the 2005, my notes are covered up there, the 2005 Transport Scotland Act. So HITRANS covers the area of Highlands, Moray, the Western Isles, the Orkney Isles, and most of Argyll and Bute. So it's a large area. Just going to move it a wee thing. I'm adding to this. There we go. Yeah, so we're the statutory body for the Transport Partnership for that large area in the north of Scotland. We work with councils, the Scottish Government, Transport Scotland, HI, and transport operators and other stakeholders, including community groups, to improve transport services and infrastructure in the north of Scotland and on routes to the Highlands and Islands. The grant that we'll be hearing about later today is part of the People in Place programme, which is a new place-based sustainable travel behaviour change programme funded by Transport Scotland, and it began last year in 2024. So the programme covers a wide range of interventions to make active travel the obvious choice for local everyday journeys. So we'll do a little bit more on the People in Place programme. Got a graphic there which just sort of shows the different themes within the programme. A lot of you may be already familiar with this. I'll try and keep it short. You can see that there's 3 themes to the left. Active schools and young people, active workplaces, which is where this grant fits, accessibility and inclusion, and then another theme which is capacity and capability building, which is just to strengthen the sector. All of the activities in all those different themes are to deliver on the active travel framework outcomes, which are to increase the number of people walking, wheeling and cycling for short journeys, to make active travel safer for all, and also to make walking, wheeling and cycling available to all. Okay, so here's a little bit about our plans for the programme, the People in Place programme in 25-26. So this year, the programme is broadly going to do the same work as we did last year, with one of the large changes being that we have an additional theme, which is sustainable transport. We'll also be developing more partnership work with community organisations delivering behaviour change activities at a very local level. So the past 6 months, we've developed a behaviour change strategy, which will guide our priorities going forward. This strategy is due to go on our website very shortly, so if it's not already there, you will be able to see it very soon. Through this, we want to target our resources to work in areas that will have the most impact. So these are places with existing or planned active travel infrastructure, places with active travel master plans. So a lot of settlements have these across our area. They tend to be larger settlements. We're also looking to do work to support areas with high indices of multiple deprivation, and we want to work at improving public transport connections for getting around smaller settlements and do some work on rural road safety campaign work. We find that behaviour change programmes are most effective when they're targeted at specific behaviours and specific areas, for example, walking to school in Kirkwall or cycling to work in Elgin. Our programme this year will also expand our cycle parking in both the community sector and also the work we do on the Sustainable Active Travel Grant. I will also be doing other work in the communities across the HITRANS area, and we're going to be expanding the High Bike share programme into Elgin in the summer. Okay, so before we get to the grant, I'm just going to say some stuff about active travel. It's probably very familiar to some folk, but it's just worth going over because I know people will be coming from a range of different backgrounds. So there's a lot of different benefits that come from active travel. I've started out with health. Regular physical activity is just great for health, and everyday journeys such as walking or cycling to work or to do errands locally are really great for this because it's part of your everyday habit. Walking and cycling regularly can help prevent chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and certain cancers. The recommended daily amount of moderate exercise is 150 minutes per week. So if that's becomes part of the habit and an active commute, it's a really easy to sustain habit. So yeah, active travel is great for both physical and mental health. My next set of very whistle-stop benefits of active travel is sort of environmental benefits. Active travel plays a huge role in helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So in Scotland, our figures from 2021 show that transport accounted for 28% of Scotland's greenhouse gas emissions, and road transport has the lion's share of that at 75%. We also have other aspects of fossil fuel-based transport, such as air pollution and noise pollution. So reducing journeys made in that way is all helping. And then finally, another benefit of active travel, which is often a little bit overlooked, is about promoting equality. So we do know that in Scotland, around 20% of households don't have access to a car, yet many of our public spaces are still designed primarily for car use. So more we can do to invest in walking, wheeling and cycling helps to make it just more inclusive for everyone. If this is an area that you're less familiar with, there's brilliant work from Public Health Scotland on both transport poverty and road space reallocation. So yeah, I recommend having a look at that work. Okay, so now we're moving on to the grants. So this is the bit where there might be some new information for those of you already quite familiar with HITRANS and the People in Place programme. The grant this year, we've made a few changes. The best place to get good information on it is the guidance documents that we've got online. So on our HITRANS webpage, we've got both the guidance document that you can see. I've done a little screenshot of it on the left, and on the right, it's a slightly less beautiful document. Now we look at it, it's just no branding, just frequently asked questions. But both of these are designed to help you fully understand the grant. And I'm aware that frequently asked questions, I might not have captured everything you might want to know. So if once you've read these documents, you've got further questions, we'd love to hear from you. We don't want anyone uncertain about how they might make their project happen. I'm not going to read them in the webinar. I figured that we can all do that in our own time, but I will go through the key points in them so that you don't have to leave the webinar and immediately go and read them. So hopefully I'll capture the main points of information in the guidance. And then if you've got questions in the question answer session, you can pick those up. So the key points, I guess the most important thing is knowing what is eligible and who is eligible. So we're funding projects that are to take place in the HITRANS region. So that's Highland, Moray, Western Isles, Orkney Isles, and most of Argyll and Bute, with the exception of Helensburgh and Lomond. Oh, I've got a late comer, let me just admit. So first point of eligibility is being within the HITRANS region. The second is the kind of organisation you are. So it's fairly broad church for this grant. It's any organisation which employs staff. So that could be businesses, local authorities, other public sector organisations, community groups, voluntary organisations, registered charities, social enterprises, or community interest companies. The one notable exception we have is we're not funding projects for improving infrastructure at private residencies. It is a capital fund, so this means it will suit well projects which are infrastructure projects, and they must support improving walking, wheeling and cycling. And then the final point, that's just the kind of picking up the main features of this grant, is an application process. So anyone who's applying will choose what they want to do at their workplace. So you'll identify suppliers and contractors you want to work with. This means it's really flexible for you to choose something that works for you. We're not going to say these are the things you must get. There's no catalogue. So you choose what will work for you, you identify suppliers and contractors, and then submit to us a fully costed application for your chosen project. If successful in your application, we'll issue a grant letter, which you're required to return a signed copy to us to form a contract with us, and also an invoice for the agreed amount. So that is the process for accessing the fund. Next up, just going to look at the types of projects that fit this fund. So this is probably a non-exhaustive list. It's probably likely that some of you can come up with ideas that will be a good fit that I've not included. So do, if you've got something in mind that doesn't appear on the list, feel free to speak to us about it. The sorts of things that will fit the application and this grant are cycle shelters, which are open to staff and visitors. Secure cycle shelters, which are available to staff only and are locked, and staff will gain access via a key or a code. Cycle repair stands or pumps to help people look after their bikes at work. Those all tend to be outdoors improvements to facilities. It's also a really good fit to do work inside, such as improving changing facilities or showers or space to store or dry outdoor clothing. Those sorts of changes are really great also because they support staff with all types of active commute and just being active in general at work, so whether that's walking or cycling to work. So there are other options as well. The fund also covers doctor bike sessions. So if that's something you're interested in establishing at your workplace, the fund will fit for that. And then finally, other options are if you've got existing infrastructure but you'd like to improve it or repair it. So sometimes the perspex on a cycle shelter might not last forever. It can go brittle as it ages or get damaged. So if there are repairs to help keep existing infrastructure doing its job, then that fits well. And also sometimes I've heard that people have had infrastructure bought and then not yet installed. So if that's the case, you've got a cycle shelter stored somewhere and you'd like to get it installed, but then there isn't any funds available to do that, then yeah, by all means apply, let us know your installation costs. And then finally, pool bikes and storage for pool bikes. So that's quite different, but it's worth just bearing in mind that's something that would fit this fund. Okay. Again, this is a change from last year. As part of our assessment of your applications, we're just going to have a couple of staff here at HITRANS score the applications. We've got some criteria. Now, the thing that we're really keen on seeing is projects that will have a great impact on improving active and sustainable travel at work. So just bear that in mind in your applications. So if you currently have no cycle parking, for example, and a workforce of 60, by adding a cycle shelter with capacity for 6 bikes, that suddenly gives your organisation potential for, say, 10% of your workforce to cycle to work. So that we can see immediately that has an impact. Also, for example, if you have cycle parking but there's no shelter and staff have raised the issue that their bikes get wet in rainy weather, then by improving it, by adding a shelter to the existing cycle hoops is improving it, and it's responding to feedback. And we know that your staff have identified that as a barrier. So again, that's something that we would look favourably upon as having a good impact. You can see the other criteria that we'll be considering are going to be cost effectiveness, but that doesn't mean you have to find the cheapest options. but it's just for you to bear in mind that we will be considering that. And we also have other criteria. So we're just wanting to make sure that the project is well planned and is deliverable. So the more information you can tell us about how you're going to deliver this, the more it will help make your case. And then the final two categories, they've got the lowest scoring. They are safety and security. So we just want you to demonstrate to us that you've considered the siting of infrastructure. This is particularly relevant to, say, outdoors cycle parking infrastructure. So just making sure that it's well lit, it's maybe near an entrance. There's often a lot of things to bear in mind when you're choosing where to site something. So we do recognise that there's some compromises to be made, but yeah, we'll want to see that this has been considered. And then the final criteria, again, this is something that's very hard to do much about because where your organisation is based is not going to change, but we've identified priority settlements in that they're towns with existing active travel master plans or the high score on the social index of multiple deprivation or an identified travel to work area. So again, those are areas that we would like to prioritise work in, but if your workplace isn't in one of those locations, don't let that put you off in any way, because if you're able to identify that it will have an impact, then that's more important to us. So those are our criteria. I'll just have a quick look at the application form. So this is what it looks like. I don't know how many people have already downloaded it to have a look. We've deliberately wanted to keep it really simple. So yeah, it's just 2 sides. We're aware that a lot of people, when they complete applications, it's many more pages because the boxes are a movable feast. So if you've got more to say about your project, then you will have a longer application form to submit. We didn't want to have it very onerous. We know that these projects are a lot of work as they are, and that you've got to do your research, choose what works for you, your team, your site, and often that involves getting permissions, whether that's from estates and facilities staff within your organisation, or if your site is leased, to go and check with landlords. So there's already a lot of work. We didn't want you to go and record, cycling and walking rates and staff before an application. So we did want it to be straightforward in the application, but we do know there's work involved in making these projects happen. So yeah, when you fill in the form, you'll see there's space for you to tell us just a bit more about the project. We'll be asking you to tell us about the expected outcomes, outputs and indicators. We do have a link in the form to Transport Scotland guidance to help with this. And just to help, outputs are the tangible results or products delivered by your project, and outcomes are about the broader, longer term effects or changes. And that's a lot of the time where sort of behaviour change works, about what changes we hope to see by making it easier. Okay, so that is our application form. And then we get to see some nice pictures after that. So this is the last slide before we get to see really lovely things. This is the timetable for the grant. So you can see the grant was launched last week on the 21st of April. We've got a closing date for applications. Again, this is something we didn't do last year, but we've introduced. This will allow us to compare applications just to be a little bit fairer in our processes. We'll be scoring and reviewing once the applications come in, and then we hope to notify successful applicants in the week beginning the 7th of July. Okay, so now we get to have a look at some of the projects that were funded last year. The picture on the left, is of Lifespan. So we'll be hearing a little bit more from Heather about all the work that was undertaken there. The picture in the foreground, there's 2 blue posts, are e-bike charging stations. So it's really exciting to see innovative technology in use there. On the right, we've got a new secure cycle parking pod in Inverness at Castle Wine. So it's quite a small space, but this was made by a local metalworks company, and it's a locked, secure cycle shelter. So it allows bikes to be kept dry and secure. And I've been told that at present 2 or 3 staff are using it, which makes 50% of the workforce in that team at that site. So it's really nice to see that. And I think previously they had some cycle hoops, but no protection from either theft or the elements. So some improvements there. One of the other projects that was funded last year was at the bus depot in Inverness at Cromwell Road. Highland Council has recently started its own in-house bus service, which is going from strength to strength. Several of the drivers who are working there actually cycle to work. The depot's in the harbour area in Inverness, so a little bit out of the town centre. So it was really helpful for them to have a secure cycle shelter. The staff have been using it, which is great. And this picture on the right, this was from last week. Again, it's really, I think, particularly uplifting and lovely. Staff have been going from lunchtime social rides. So that was a picture, I'm not sure if it's the before or the after, but there's some lovely smiles. So maybe it's the after of a lunchtime cycle ride. Also, useful feedback from the team. The cycle shelter that they chose has perspex all round except for the front. So it's probably a little bit hard to see in the picture. You can see the shiny perspex on the left, but the front doesn't have that. And they have found that when it's a bit windy and when it rains, which it hasn't done for ages, but when it does rain, their bikes get wet. So they're planning to modify it and just add some perspex to the front sections. So again, if you've got something existing that could do with improvements, that would be a fit. Next up, again, this is a very similar cycle shelter at Cala. Jackie from Cala gave us a lovely testimonial, which is on our website, but Cala have sort of made it clear to us as a charity that funding something like this was something they just wouldn't have been able to afford. So that's nice to bear in mind that it's helping financially where sometimes these changes wouldn't be possible. The model that they chose was they sacrificed a car parking space. And I don't know if you can sort of see from the photo, but it's probably the least desirable car parking space at that office. And it's right tucked in the corner of the building. So yeah, the car park was otherwise full, but the adjacent space to it was also not used. So yeah, I think that area there it's not a popular place to use for parking cars, but great for the bikes. Again, it's a small team there. There's 6 members of staff there. 2 of them regularly cycle to work using e-bikes. They were reluctant to leave them outside, just worried about theft. So the shelter just allows the staff to carry on cycling, and sometimes a third member of the team. So again, it's about 50% when 3 people are going. So really great to see there. Final slide. I hope I'm not stealing the thunder of Lucy, who'll be coming on to speak shortly. This is the cycle shelter that was installed at the Nairn Arts Centre. So previously the cycle capacity was less. There were 6 hoops and there was no shelter. So this new facility has expanded the capacity to allow 10 bikes to be parked, and also there's a bike repair stand and pump. So a really great amenity to allow people to do minor repairs in the community. So yeah, we'll be hearing more about that from Lucy shortly. And just before I finish, this was not part of the grants from last year, but I did visit the Art Centre at Nairn at the weekend and was really taken with this changing facility. Just really nice. It's so simple, but benches and hooks, somewhere that you can sit and change your shoes, your clothes, and a shower. So I didn't have lots of pictures of great changing areas. It wasn't part of the grant from last year, but I thought really great fit just to demonstrate the sorts of things we'd be happy to fund as part of this grant. So now we get to hear from our guest speakers. I know that both Heather and Lucy have joined today. Heather, would you like to start for us? I've got a slide.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Thank you. So welcome, Heather. I'll show your slide.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So as Sheila says, I'm Heather Sutherland and I work at LifeScan in Inverness. I don't know how familiar everyone is with Inverness, but we are a large manufacturing company manufacturing blood glucose strips, and we are located along the A9, and we're kind of jammed in between the hospital and the UHI. So we've been there about 30 years we're coming up that we've been on site, and it's expanded over time. And generally we have pretty good changing facilities, or we had locker rooms, we had showers, we had bike shelters. You can see the bike shelter there on the right, minus the e-bike chargers that only went in. So we had pretty good facilities. And last year Sheila had reached out to us and we were looking at a travel survey. So we did this travel survey and it allowed us a chance to get some feedback on, how people commute, where they commute from, reasons maybe they don't choose active travel, and what would encourage them going forward to do active travel. And that kind of led to a whole pile of feedback coming back, and we looked at it and we said, oh, there is actually improvements we can make. So once we kind of drilled down what improvements we could make, we then were able to apply for the funding. So some of those improvements that were highlighted was, you can see in the first two pictures, there is actually dry changing facilities. So we have multiple locker rooms across our site, but they're unisex. We do have benches in them that were not ideal for getting changed, and they also have security cameras in them as well to prevent, any theft from benches, hooks, etc. So they're not ideal places to get changed at all. So what we found was people were actually going into toilet cubicles, squeezing in, trying to get changed, and it wasn't the best. And also the toilets aren't necessarily right beside the locker rooms, so it was a lot of people were like, even though a way to do something active, were like, I can't be bothered going to a locker, going to the toilet, coming back to the locker, and then we just kind of give up. So that was one good bit of feedback we got, and it was quite broad across all our employees. The other one we had was, we encouraged a few years ago people to use e-bikes. We upped our cycle to work schemes, so it was a little bit higher so people could afford to get an e-bike on that. And then we said to them they couldn't charge their batteries on site. So our insurance company said that just due to fire risks with a lot of dodgy batteries on the go, we couldn't charge them on site. So it was a little bit of, yeah, take your e-bike, be active, but hey, you can't charge them here. But people were still charging them, so we had a bit of a risk there. So we're like, okay, what can we do? And one was actually have external e-bike chargers away from our main building. Our insurance company was happy, and also it meant that people didn't have to take the batteries off their bikes and take them inside, etc. So that was the main funding. On top of that, we also went in to look for additional benches. So in our shower cubicles and in our locker room space, we installed some more benches, some more hooks, and we also designated a special area for drying wet clothes that also has a kind of drip tray underneath it to allow, I guess, in the winter, especially in our lovely Scottish weather, people to cycle or walk in the wet and be able to actually hang their clothes up and be dry for when they leave. So the funding was brilliant for that. We did do all the work internally ourselves through our facilities team, but being able to buy all the materials in was great. Our dry changing cubicles, they went in, I think it was about February time this year, and our e-bike chargers just went live a couple of weeks ago. We had to wait for the weather to improve or the risk of frost to disappear so we can lay the concrete underneath the electric cables. So yeah, so the feedback, we haven't had too much feedback because it's all fairly new, but the feedback that we have had is great. We've seen a lot more people, I guess it comes with the kind of time of year as well and the weather better, a lot more people cycling, walking and going out at lunchtime for runs as well, and people going straight to the gym after work, so choosing to get changed on site and then going to the gym. So some really good feedback. We are looking to do a repeat of the travel survey or a very similar survey at the end of Q3 so we can actually compare what the results are and have that feedback. Some other improvements we're looking at, not so much from a funding perspective, but the feedback we had was some people on our site, even though they had worked with LifeScan for 10, 20 years, weren't aware we had some of these facilities on site, or they weren't aware they could use different locker rooms or different shower facilities. We are a very large site, so it's kind of understandable and people work in different areas. So as part of that, we are going to be doing small tours for our employees and we'll take them around site so they can actually see where these facilities are and it's not daunting opening a door to somewhere where they've never been. Also highlight some of the benefits that we had on site and we still have. For example, we've got bike repair kits at our security office. We have the cycle to work scheme. We've got multiple other bike racks around the site. We've also got electric car chargers, which we had before as well. So all of that, we'll do little tours. And we plan to incorporate that with wellness walks, which we've rolled out in the last couple of years. And this really is just a time and slots kind of advertised, and anyone who wants to come along comes and joins us at the front gate and we'll walk over to the UHI at lunchtime, hopefully in weather similar to today. And it gives people a chance to connect with people they may not have previously connected with or not for a while. And then when we come back on site, we can add on little tours around site. Some of the other work we're looking to do, or we've started, is we've connected with Stagecoach as well. So look at sustainable travel and what we can do in a public transport manner. So on site, we have workers who do a kind of typical Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 type role, but we also manufacture 24/7. So we have shift workers with similar shifts that I believe from the hospital, right beside Rigmore. So we're working with Stagecoach and trying to look at the best kind of routes and timetables and how that can help, and also with the UHI as well. Again, connecting with our neighbours is a big thing we're wanting to do in the future as well, and see if we can share some facilities or public transport, car sharing, etc. And then just one other thing I've seen from HITRANS come through, I don't know if you're going to cover this, Sheila, was better points as well. So I've seen that come through. So that's something we're looking at as well. And is there incentives we can give our employees for choosing active travel and being more active outside of work as well? So better point seems like a great starting point there, but we're also looking at things on site as well. For car sharing, can we give designated spaces that maybe are closer to workspaces that people come in? Can we do some sort of prize for the most active travel? I don't know. We're kind of brainstorming just now. It's a bit early, but we're definitely looking at some incentives. I think that is me kind of covered all my points. So yeah, if you've got any questions, I'll be on at the end, so you can ask me any questions there. But certainly feedback we've had is the funding has been brilliant, and what we've been able to do with it is excellent, and we've seen the benefits already in the space of a few weeks. Those photos are now updated. They have bikes connected to them as well, so people are using them. So. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Heather. That's great. I mean, I feel that you've done such great work. It's really inspirational because you've covered so many bases with this, both in terms of doing activities for staff and making sure the information reaches people, and just looking at everything across the board from lift chair options and improving public transport. So it's really great. I'd also like to just move on to our next guest speaker. Lucy, would you like to join us now? And do you have some slides?
Hello. No, well, I've got some pictures to show you. Can I take control?
I think so. I've stopped sharing, so you should be able to share.
Ooh. Share.
Take the driving seat.
There you go.
Thanks, Lucy.
I'll just show my entire screen because I don't think that's going to do any. Oh, apparently I need to share system audio. No, it won't let me do that. Okay, whatever. No, it won't let me do that too. So I'm trying to press the share button, but it won't let me. So that's not working.
Shall I show the slide again and just have your bike shelter up?
Yeah. No, I was going to show you a picture of the before as well as the after, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's not vital. Can you see me? Hello.
Yes.
That's just very strange. Anyway, right. So I work at Nairn Community Centre and Nairn Community and Arts Centre, which is right by the A96, and my office is upstairs, and the view, it adds thousands to my salary, thousands, I tell you, it's brilliant. But I regularly cycle to work, and so does my colleague who works with me, who's a keen cyclist, and AI tells me that 52 community groups and local charities use the Nairn Community and Arts Centre, with over 70,000 visitors each year. So it's a very well frequented place in Nairn. And it needed a bit more than just the kind of 3 unsheltered cycle hoops that were outside its front door, which were frequently overused and had too many bikes, and everybody had to just park up against the wall, and everybody got their saddles wet in the rain. So we heard about this grant and we applied, and we obviously with the Community and Arts Centre's management. It was a very straightforward process. We did a bit of internet shopping, so we went to various different suppliers. Just as an illustrative, I got a quote from Falco for £15,000, and I got a quote from Cycle Hoop for £7,000. Guess which one I went with? There was a little bit of toing and froing, I guess, with Cycle Hoop. Once we decided to sort of say yes, let's do you, sort of thing, they couldn't pour the footings, so I had to get a local company to come and pour the footings, pour the concrete, because the original Cycle Hoops were just set into chucky stones, and so we had to replace those chucky stones with a raft, a concrete raft, and then we had to come back and say, actually, that concrete raft's going to cost more than we thought it would, after the we got the quote in, and so we had to apply for further money. So the entire grant that we've had has been nearly £10,000, 9,700 something. So we are very grateful for it, and so is everybody at the Nairn Community and Arts Centre. And we've released the news on several different sort of platforms. We're going to be putting it into the newspaper, and Nairn I think is fair. Can make a bit of a controversy about anything, but I've also made it clear to everybody who's asked me that this grant is available to anybody and everybody who wants to apply for it. So I think you'll be expecting an application from the sports club next door, who are jealous, basically, of the facility, and maybe from the Common Good for the Links area as well, which I think would be wonderful. So when they, everybody's got to watch the recording and find out the news, and we'll put the news about this grant into our newsletter, which goes out to all the Nairn businesses and everything. So hopefully it'll lead to much more use of active travel, and people using their bikes, and both for the events and for working here. So yeah, I think that's about it, really. We're very grateful, and it's been very straightforward.
Thank you, Lucy. That's excellent. Thank you for sharing your story. This brings us now into the question and answer section. So do please come back on with your cameras. It can feel a little bit more personal now if you want to come in and join in. And yet, if you've got any questions, do just please ask. You can either raise your hand, you can use the chat raise hand.
That was the before.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, see?
It was a bit grim.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent.
sorry about
well done on going in and making it happen. Yeah, so adding the shelter is just really nice. I think that's one of the nice things about this initiative. You don't need to stop at what you've got. So much like Heather, it's brilliant. We've got bike shelters, we've got lockers, but can we do more? So it can be iterative. You can keep coming back and going, right, we've done this is the feedback, what next? So yeah, we'd love to hear from people and what they'd like to do to support active travel.
And there it is, beautiful in the sunshine. Sorry about the lack of technological expertise before that.
That's okay. That's okay. That's brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, does anyone want to come back in with their cameras or have questions? Tilia.
Cheers. Thank you both for your presentations. It's inspiring to see, and I'm already thinking like, oh, who can I send this to? Organizations, businesses, communities, or I guess more, businesses or actual workplaces. Maybe a quick one for Lucy. When I just saw the picture that you showed, there's a kind of a mural behind it, but it seems a bit faded. And as you're a community and arts center, maybe nice to, and also in line with what just happened in Lossiemouth, to have a cool kind of a mural, maybe whatever, designed by local people, or a competition thing or so.
It's a moss painting that was put on the wall like over 10 years ago. I don't know anything about it, frankly. But I will raise it with the people at the Community and Arts Centre and see if they can do anything to improve it.
Yeah, that's just a thought. I've seen pictures of Lossiemouth Harbour where they've just recently made a mural, and it's just it looks beautiful and it attracts a lot of people.
I won't bore you with the story of the fact that I tried to introduce a mural into Nairn Town Centre about 4 years ago, and there was so much controversy about it everywhere. Any plan that I had,
we love it.
I just gave up, frankly.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And Nairn is very controversial. Anything that you try and do is controversial automatically.
Takes yeah. I had a quick question also for Heather. I'm not familiar with those charging points. The one that we've got at work here at Murray Council is the Falco ones that you kind of like, you park your bike in, and then in the middle, so it's a parking place for two, and in the middle there's what do you call it, a plug socket block. I always mix up the words, but you can then plug in your charger there. How do those blue ones work?
I think I'll have to get maybe back to you, but they are, I believe, just pillars they've got the two charging plugs in them, so each pillar can charge two bikes.
Oh, great. Yeah, you just
so
place
I'm
them on the
presuming that
stand
you'd have your own charge cable and you could plug it in there. Yeah, I mean the big thing was getting that charging away from being indoors in the office space. So
yeah, exactly. Cool, nice.
I can certainly give you the details, because I mean they are purpose-built e-bike stands.
Okay.
So
yeah. No, I guess I'd be interested. We like the ones that we've got from Felco. The only thing, and I've raised it with them, is that how they've placed the plug sockets. They're quite close to each other. So if both e-bikes are charged the same time, then the lead of the top one is kind of like sitting in the way of the one at the bottom, if you know what I mean. You really need to kind of like ram them in. And I think over time that's going to kind of possibly damage the lead of those charging points. But that's just a bit of small detail, but I think they matter in the end, and suppliers or manufacturers should pay attention to those details.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anna, you've got your hand up.
Hey there. Yep, I have indeed. I've got a few questions, but apologies, they may well be in the information overview document, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, so apologies if they are. But my first one is, are costs paid up front? You said they need to come with, applicants need a fully costed proposal, and then they get a grant letter which they sign, and then they send an invoice. So does that suggest that it's upfront payment?
Yeah, we'll pay the invoice on receipt. So yes, some organisations will need to receive the funds to start carrying out the work. So yeah, that's
Brilliant.
our process.
And is there, like, what's the scale of the grant? Like, how much have you got in total? How competitive do you expect it to be?
We've got double the amount we had last year, and last year we funded 5 projects. Sort of given as a sort of, it's quite wide, but we've suggested applications can be from £500, which might cover, say, doctor bike sessions, like a series of those, up to around 10,000. If you've got a project that comes in a little bit higher, so as Lucy described, the work to get the shelter and the bike stand was close to that 10,000. If you've got a project that's above that or out with that range, just speak to us. So yeah, it's I mean, this is its second year. We've already developed it and changed it a little bit from last year. So any more learnings this year, we can feed it into next year. So yeah.
Brilliant. And it can be 100% funding from yourselves.
Absolutely, yeah. I think match funding's great. So if there are suitable match funds, we'd happily match fund, but we're just aware that there's it gets harder to find some good matches sometimes. We don't want that to be a barrier. I think there's some funds out there that are asking for match funding, either from the organisation or another fund, but we just figured, if it's not something that's happening already in an organisation, we don't want finding two suitable funds to be the sort of the barrier that prevents that project from going ahead. So yeah, we'll do 100% funding.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, have you got social media going out about it soon? And we would share that if I can give our comms team a heads up.
Yeah, it's currently on LinkedIn, and we've got it on X or Twitter. It's been in the press, so I know that the press article has been shared in Facebook groups. So we don't have a HITRANS Facebook or Instagram presence, but I think that articles that were out in the media have been shared in several pages. So
school rules for the school.
What was that? Sorry, was that somebody's?
I think it's a bit of background noise.
Bit of background noise, yeah. Fair point. Cool, yeah. So I mean, It was in the press this week after we put the media release out last week. I think it got picked up Sunday evening, bizarrely. Kind of thought it might not be picked up at all, having it gone out first thing on Monday, but a week later it went out, which is great. So yeah, if it's helpful, I can send you the links to that. I can do that.
That would be brilliant. Thank you. No, yeah, ask our comms team to share. That'd be great. And also, if you have a template of an email that you've been sending to workplaces that you think might be interested, that would also be really helpful. But only if you already have one. Thank you. We'll see what we can do to share and spread the good word. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Anna. Are there any more questions about the workplace grant or about our 2 case studies with both Heather and Lucy? Okay. Oh, Tilia, you have another question. Excellent. You're good at questions.
Again, actually, it's a remark, and maybe this is an open door to many of you, so apologies beforehand. But what we learned with another project and a different fund was that when we ordered cycle parking and some repair stations, and often they come from the companies that are, for instance, in England or at least further down south. If the order is too small, they will either not bid for it, or they will say like, oh, the installation costs are going to be humongous. So that led us then to separate those two things a little bit. What Lucy also hinted at is that, you know, you order just the supply and the delivery, that's one thing, and then the other bit is that you organize a local contractor to install them. But it depends a bit on the scale of your order. And if it's big enough, they'll come up and do the jobs. But sometimes I'm not overly familiar with it. But I think concrete also needs to set for a little while before they can actually start installing it. So depending on that a bit. So I thought, just in case people might not realize that could be, if you have one repair stand or one shelter, it might not be enough for them to actually come and install it. But then you can separate it. And it's nice, I guess, to employ local contractors. But sometimes it's also handier to have just a job done by one company and that's it. So keep that in mind if you weren't aware yet.
Can I come back and share a bit of learning?
Yes.
I've ordered benches wholesale for Nen, sort of massive, great loads of picnic benches from a company called Broxap, and they charged absolute fortunes for the delivery, and then they needed somewhere to deliver it, and then they needed somewhere that had a forklift truck to get the stuff off the back of the lorry, and all of which I kind of needed to organise with the council because I don't have these things. So, you know, never mind just you know, a local contractor to actually do the installation. That didn't seem to be too much of a problem, but the actual sort of logistics of getting heavy things delivered and when and where to and where they're going to be stored before they get you know, installed, it's all things that need to be thought about. Anyway, yes, just by the way.
That's all really helpful learning to share. Are there any more questions? I've got a couple more slides, and actually some of what you've just shared fits well with what I was going to come on to. It's like top tips for applying and delivering the project. So actually you reminded me, because some of them I was going to touch on lightly, and what you've said is a reminder that this stuff matters. So, but yeah, are there any more questions before I show some more slides? No? Okay, well, I shall put them up. If anything comes up to anybody, yeah, feel free to ask again. Okay, where have we got to? Okay, so learning and top tips. Yeah, so in terms of the grant, I recommend checking the guidance and the frequently asked questions. I think there's information contained in that I haven't gone into in full detail today. I'm hoping that what we've covered covers the main key points. But yeah, the top tips I've got, I began with start your project early, because yeah, you never know what unforeseen things will crop up, and that could involve difficulty with delivery. So yeah, if there's infrastructure that sounds great and is a really great price, you might find that the delivery time is delayed. And yeah, I've certainly experienced that personally, that a company did a great sales pitch about, yes, they'd come and do it, but it was like they couldn't quite get their heads around the Highlands as a destination. So I know the HITRANS area also includes lots of islands as well. So yeah, just make sure you've had those conversations. And yeah, it's not possible always to get straight answers. It's worth just checking. It also included in the top tips, speak to everybody who's involved. So speak to staff who might use the infrastructure, get some feedback about what they're looking for. Depending on your organisation's size and scale and how it how it's modelled, you might have estates team to speak to facilities. If your site is a leased site, you might have to speak to a landlord regarding permission. There's other things to check regarding the work you want to do. So I'd be checking for electrical cables. I know the Castle Wine, the cycle shelter you saw there, it was bolted in, and one of the checks that had to happen before that went ahead was checking that the depth of the bolt into the ground wouldn't damage the dry coursing the building, because it's actually on a platform above the high street in Inverness, so there's the shops down below it, so it's sort of on the roof of some shops. So yeah, there's a lot of conversations to have just to check about the functionality, whether that's how it's installed and what you need. So if you need a concrete base, as Lucy described, just make sure you've got the information. And sometimes that can be hard to get. So that first suggestion about starting early just gives a bit of scope to have the space to deal with these things as they crop up. I've also got that there's some really great guidance from Cycling Scotland on procuring cycle parking, and it gives some examples and it does name some manufacturers, but I think, yeah, anyone who's done this, you can see when you go to Google, there's lots of manufacturers out there, but there's some good guidance for things to check for, like checking that they've got the required sort of safety standards, which mostly do, but just a thing to be aware of, and even just like how you choose what's right for your site and how to things to consider when you're looking where to site it. You know, that example at Cala, where a car parking space was sacrificed, means there's already a tarmac surface. Sometimes it might be about a grassy area which might need some groundworks. And yes, Tilia said you have to think about the timescale, like how long do you need to let that set? And yeah, as also Heather said, you may have to think about the time of year you do it. When is a suitable time to be avoiding frost to get that work done? So there's a lot to think about. I have also mentioned we've got resources with Travel Know-How Scotland, although Heather, you beat me because I didn't include Better Points. So if I had my wits about me, Better Points would be in this slide right here, right now. Better Points is an incentive scheme, so it's to support active and sustainable travel, and there's some great prizes as part of that. So that's a really good initiative to get involved with your organisation. It's also we're still doing work with Better Points to look at ensuring we've got good gift cards available for local businesses. So I guess as it stands, there might be some national schemes, like if you win prizes, you might get coffees from Costa, that sort of thing. But there's more and more local businesses joining up to be included in the prizes. So it's a really great way to promote local businesses and get prizes that are lovely and you can enjoy. So yes, my bad for not including Better Points there, but it's a really great incentive scheme. So yeah, that's a sort of whistle stop of the top tips. I am aware that I did include in the agenda, we'd be mentioning another grant with HITRANS. So I'm happy to go over some information of that. My colleague Becca, who's in the call just now, this is the grant that she manages, so she may be able to add any more details if I overlook anything. But the main function of this webinar is to look at the workplace grant. So it's just worth just explaining that the cycle parking grant is very similar. It is part of the People in Place programme also. It fits in our work in HITRANS under integrated transport, whereas the workplace grant fits under smart travel choices. So they're in different projects within HITRANS and has slightly different remits. So the community cycle parking grant is focused on looking at improving cycle parking in community settings such as schools, and also at transport hubs, so at rail stations, at bus stations, at ferry terminals throughout the HITRANS region. It can be used for all sorts of things. So the examples in the picture there, we can see a secure cycle shelter at a primary school in Murray. We've also got open bike shelters that can be used to allow people to lock up their bikes and keep them protected from the element at bus and rail stations. It is possible also for some non-standard shelters. So I think in some instances a garden shed has been used where that's a suitable solution. And it also covers things like the bike repair stand and pumps, exactly like what you'll have seen in the slide for the Nairn Art Centre. So the grant is open to both community organisations and also to local authorities. And primarily it's going to be used by local authorities who are looking to sort of do strategic improvements to their area in terms of just improving cycle parking. So a lot of the members of staff, sort of development officers with the local authorities, are already working with Becca to look at where they might put in applications for this year. Is there anything else you would like to say about this fund, Becca?
No, that was a great overview. Thanks, Sheila. Yeah, there's more guidance and information on the HITRANS website alongside the workplace grant. So any questions, just give me a shout. I think my email's at the end of the presentation, but I'll pop it in the chat as well.
Excellent. Thanks. So yeah, if you have any questions and they come to you after the webinar, do please get in touch. If you haven't looked at the guidance, do have a look at it. It's the guidance document is slightly more formal, but we do have a guidance document for the workplace grant, and then there's a couple of different guidance documents for the cycle parking grant, one for the local authorities and one for the community sector. Yeah, and the frequently asked questions is for the workplace grant. So yeah, I'm going to stop sharing, and I think there's a few more questions. So let's. Hello, sorry. I stopped sharing and I just was stuck in PowerPoint land for some reason. Yes, some more questions. I didn't actually see who raised their hand first. Tilia, do you want to go? You're higher on my screen, so Tilia.
I think Anna was first. I'll let you
Was
go
it Anna
first,
first?
Anna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I really don't mind, but yeah, same. Got some questions to follow. Just to ask again, similar question with the cycle parking grant, is it a similar amount of money to the workplaces one, or larger, smaller? How competitive do you expect it to be?
Yeah, so the cycle parking grant is a lot more competitive than the workplace one, so that's kind of primarily why we've not kind of done more promotion, just to avoid disappointment really. But we have got slightly less funding than we did last year as well. But I'm not saying no. I would still encourage people to put applications in. But yeah, just we've not kind of promoted it quite as widely as the workplace grant.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Tilia, what was your question?
Yeah, so actually, literally today, an issue came up with cycle parking, the one that Becca is in charge of. And I'm going to have a visit at a community hall actually, and they said like, oh, previously the council told us we need planning permission. So I double checked that today with my colleagues because they own the land also around the hall. So I was like, why would that be? And it's not it's not listed. It's not a conservation area. So my colleagues said like possibly there are some situations where you do need planning permission, even though you own it yourself. Like, so if it's in the front of the premises, for instance, it might need planning permission, or if it is within a 1 meter distance to the boundary of your land. And so my colleagues told me I have to have a look online or chat with the planning colleagues here to look at informal determination. So basically what I'm trying to say is be aware that there might be instances where at least you need to approach the planning department of the local authority to make sure that even though you do own it, you do have planning permission. And my main question here is as well, in case we do need some form or informal form of planning permission, just that they say like you're good to go, that sometimes costs money. And I've heard that sometimes the local authority pays half and that the applicant pays half. Is that a cost we could incorporate in the funding application?
That's a new one to me. I've not come across that before.
Yeah.
Potentially, yes. I would probably need to check with Vicky, because she might have come across that in the past with other grants that she's managed. I'm not sure if anyone else has any experience with that, but I will definitely get back to you on that one. I'll ask Vicky.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. And I see Neil has a hand up. Is that in relation to this question? Because I had a little remark which is different.
Just to say, we have had one of our shelters required planning application. Typically, it's about £300 for that kind of type of application. Okay, I'm the authority, but our section still had to pay the full cost for that. Yeah. Like everything you mentioned there is a possibility any scheme you go to could require planning, so it'd be well worth being able to put that into the grant. It would just be part of the cost overall, really. It was a good point. Another one is some of the companies you come with won't give you any details on foundations for your shelters. Just try to find somebody that can give you an idea, even the size of foundations to put in, depending on how windy an area you are, because it could be quite a uplift force on these things, could require quite a decent foundation in just to make sure it stays put. So that was it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
These are good points. Yeah, and Tilly, I think you really covered well the planning. I did look into it for the guidance, just made sure I'd covered it. And yeah, as you said, broadly, they mostly don't need it, but there's a few exceptions like the conservation area or if it's a sort of line of sight issue at a junction. So yeah, these are things that are worth looking into for your particular projects and just having time to untangle anything like that crops up. So yeah, it's worth bearing in mind. But it's unusual to have to get planning, but as Neil says, it obviously sometimes happens, and that's obviously what's happened to you too, Tilly, with your project there. So yeah, it's worth just having some awareness of that.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing I wanted to say, I saw the repair stand in one of Becca's pictures, I think the Store and Away bus station. I really like that stand, repair stand, because it has a kind of a door behind which the tools are hanging, and also most of the wires are covered. And we found here, mostly with the ones that are quite close to the coast, is that they get rusty really quickly, and the wire kind of like starts, because of the rust, kind of like what do you call that, disintegrates almost, and they become really spiky and tricky to work with. So I really like that they're the Turvex, Turvec. I think they've merged with Broxap recently, which caused a bit of delay recently because I forgot to mention that. But I do really like them. So the door, and it comes with a key, but when they're for public use, they shouldn't be locked. But normally a key is given to the person who's then in charge of that repair stand. Nothing against all the other stands, but the particular fact that there is a door and it hides the tools helps that they are preserved better, I think.
Yeah, Neil put his thumb up there. I've definitely experienced a really lovely repair stand that was put in through work, and it didn't take very long to see some of the tools sort of get so rusted that they, like needle nose pliers, wouldn't open and what have you. So yeah, they do need either ongoing maintenance, so it's a good point to just consider design. So yeah, but yeah, there's some great facilities out there too. So yeah, Neil, you raised your thumb. Was that because you like the tools with the protection?
Yes, that's a similar thing we've had. We had about 10 cycle repair stands, and it was the exact same thing. Coastal location, and within a very short amount of time, months, the tools were just not usable anymore. The other one is that when the tools are hanging open as well, more visible, we find people are sometimes stealing the tools. So having them kind of closed in is just a little bit nicer. Protects them. You're putting a £2,000 bike onto a stand. You want something to repair that looks quite good. You don't want something going on there that's rusty. So yeah, good call.
Yeah. Sorry, really last point, I think, to add to that, it could help if you order repair stands, depending again on the location. But in addition to ordering the repair stand, also order a replacement set of tools, that if they do get rusty or they get taken away, that you have replacement tools at hand instead of having to go through all kinds of procedures or waiting for next year's funds. So just order them, possibly if they are available with a company, and then you have at least 1 or 2 sets at hand to replace them. That's me.
That's a good shout, Tilia. Thank you. Excellent. Does anyone have any further questions in relation to either of the grants, or just to find out a little bit more about the projects that have been described in our case studies, or other sort of work that's cropped up through the discussion? No? Okay, well, if anyone thinks of questions later, then by all means get in touch by email, and you've got our contact details. So we do want to hear questions, and yeah, we'd also love just if you can think of anyone that you think would be a great case to apply, you can then share the information about these grant opportunities. We want to see them taken up. So yeah, and thank you again for giving your time today to come along, and thanks especially to our guest speakers for giving their time to share all the work they did and their learning from taking part in the grant last year and getting to see the examples of what they've been able to achieve there. So really great. And yeah, thank you again for coming along today. I think hearing the questions helps enrich it. So some really good questions to help just tease out more of the issues. So yeah, thank you for everyone, and thanks for coming along. Excellent.